Where you going? No, man. You got the right classroom. Come on in, take a seat beside me, my friend. Hey, look, here come T.A. Charlie. Let's see what he got to say.
Now broadcasting from a remote location deep in the bowels of the LA wilderness, somewhere under the wood and metal of a nondescript building, surrounded by schnauzers and model tanks, we once again bring you The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and you search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it. You can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can catch us on Facebook, Twitch, TwitX, and even YouTube today. Now, I have warned him more than once that he's going to get a strike today, but he insisted. Then you can catch a podcast after the show. It's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and maybe BitChute if we don't get a strike today. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page. That's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. If you find our classes helpful, please click the thumbs up, like, subscribe, and share it with those you think could benefit from it. Just warn them, and you'll find it out today. Like I said, I think a strike's coming. Joe is an acquired taste, and this show is listener sponsored, meaning we do not solicit business advertising. So we're not limited in the content we provide y'all. With that said, we do ask for your participation on a value for value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of those who do support this show.
Hey, we all know T.A. Charlie isn't all there. Now, just stay seated and give it a chance. You'll soon realize we not might be the smartest, but we each independently form opinions based on reason and logic. We're free thinkers. Let's see what The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic has on the lesson plan for today.
Well, when I was telling Charlie what was on the plan for today, he told me I should put that up there. And I liked it, but I was thinking I'm more in this kind of mood.
Yeah, we're in trouble today, folks.
And I had to explain what FO means to Charlie because, he's too much of a good boy and I'm a little too worldly, but at least Charlie knew what that animal was. For those of you who are just listening, this is a wolverine. Wolverine eats honey badger.
and for those in the chat, I am taking wagers on him being struck on YouTube today. Current odds are 2-1, but they may go up as the show progresses.
All right, let's get going. I'm not in the mood for a lot of preamble, so let's just have at it. If you've seen the headline or the title of your show today, you'll know where we're going to be at. All of these pro-Palestinian, quote-unquote, protests. Here's one, New York City. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. Folks, oh my gosh. All right. Hopefully you've been in my class on the origin of this Palestine-Israel debate or conflict or whatever. It's relatively new in history. There's no such thing as Palestine. That's like saying the Southeast United States is a country. It's a region. The term Palestine has always been a region like Levant. It's just a general area. It is not a people. It is not a nation. Never has been. Never will be. We're going to bring a little, I'm going to endeavor to bring a little clarity to this issue today. We've gone through it before. We're going to go through it again today. Different ways. Yes, this is Manic Monday. Today's show was brought on by the headlines. I'll show you in a minute. We'll get there. But this is one of the pictures from New York's quote-unquote protests. Here's another. From the river to the sea, by any means necessary. I'm sorry, but that makes me want to play cowboys and Muslims. Because I know that this has got nothing to do with what they claim. The idea of free Palestine is a lie. What this is get rid of Israel. And not just the nation of Israel, Jews. So hold on. We're going to have a day today. We're going to use logic and reason, and we are going to look at definitions and stories put out by the mainstream media, quote unquote mainstream media. But this thing about getting rid of Palestine, not just about Palestine, because it's also about this. This is a picture from a anti-Trump pro-Palestine rally when Trump moved the capital, recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. This is anti-America as well. These protests are actually anti-West, anti-Christianity. And it brings us to this. This is going to be our first story for today. This is from the Gateway Pundit. Let me change our screen around here a little bit. Nah, I don't like that. That's hard for y'all to see. All right, here we go. And there it is. Whoop, there it is. Campus protester says, quote, "We must have a revolution so we can have a socialist reconstruction of the USA." All right, Charlie, here we go. You ready with the hashtag? Hello, Woodrow freaking Wilson. Just in a different form, different flavor of ice cream. So we read down through here and we see this is Andy New or whatever. He's the one reporting it. He embedded himself in the Antifa and BLM riots, and he's got a book out because he hid himself behind a mask. That was very good for him but he got beat up and put in the ICU because they finally found out who he was. He's a reporter. So he's embedded in these people. And he quotes one of the organizers. He says, at a far left rally for Gaza at George Washington University, an extremist on the microphone says, there's only one solution, quote, there's only one solution, Intifada revolution. We must have a revolution so we can have a socialist reconstruction of the United States of America. Socialist reconstruction, what's that mean? In a nutshell, socialism is man as his own God. It's secular humanism. It is a religion. Period. It meets the definition. We're not going to go over to prove that today. We've done that in the past. That's not my point for today. But this is about the eradication of all quote unquote biblically based religions except Islam. The thing is, Islam is an apostasy that is so perverted from the scriptures as to not be recognizable. If you doubt me, stick with me in the second half of this show today. We are going to quote the Quran. Yes, I'm going to proverbially smack Muhammad in the face with my glove today. I don't care. I'm going to be quoting the Quran. And if that hurts, oh well. Like we said earlier, Honey Badger don't care. I'm tired of the media and the misinformation, the deliberate misinformation. So we're going to try to put a little clarity into this issue for y'all today. We're going to go back to your homework. And your homework today, roadtoconcord.com, Global Organizing Against Israel and Its Ancient Origins. You've got a pretty good homework assignment there that ends with Charlie's favorite slide. So we'll get to that today. But the second story here, this is from the New York Times. It says, here's where pro-Palestinian protests have embroiled U.S. campuses. And it gives us a map right there. Well, we can go to a different map I've found for you. This one here that we're showing you not only shows you where the protests but the size of the circle tells you how big it was. Now, this is all fairly recent. It gives you a timeline down there on the bottom. But these protests are nothing new. There's another map. This is Al Jazeera up to 2020. 2020 hadn't finished by then. I want you to notice something here. With the exception of England, not Scotland, not Ireland, England. With the exception of England, in 2020, there had been no pro-Palestinian protests in Scotland, Ireland, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, or the United States. So they had only protested in one of the lion's 7 cubs, the lion being Israel, the nation of Judah. Today, that's not the case. These protests have expanded to just about everywhere now, globally. So the Wall Street Journal, again, some anti-Israel protesters are paid to protest. Rockefeller and Soros grants are subsidizing those who disrupt college campuses. Wall Street Journal. This is true. They also funded those. They paid the people for the BLM riots and for the Antifa, the Occupy movement. A lot of those people were paid. They were given cash to do that. What's more, most of those people are already on some form of welfare. This is straight out of the little blue book, The Coming Insurrection. I showed it to you last week, Friday, in fact, about how they were going to overthrow the nation of France using welfare to fund their army so that the people had the time to go protest without having to worry about how they were going to pay their bills. This is a form of a people eating their own. Those who are producing and trying to make a society run are being used as a host, while the parasites leech off the host to destroy the host, which is what parasites do. They usually end up destroying the host. And that's what's going to happen in this case if something doesn't stop it. So let's go back to our homework. I'm going to start here. This is from Legal Insurrection. The story says university presidents have participated in the creation of a monstrous movement on campuses that uses targeting of Jews in Israel as an organizing mechanism. This is Saul Alinsky. The targeting of Jews in Israel is just the mechanism by which they are putting this little rally thing together. And there's a subtitle here. It says, My Interview on the Daily Signal podcast. This is by William A. Jacobson, April 27, 2024. He says, My Interview on the Daily Signal podcast, quote, they have participated in the creation of a monstrous movement on campuses that is anti-American, anti-Western, anti-capitalist, and that uses targeting of Jews in Israel as an organizing mechanism. It is a tearing down of the statutes ideology. It is remove names from buildings ideology. It is deconstruction of our society. It is very reminiscent to me of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia sort of ideology, where you go back to year zero. Year zero. There are no indications anywhere in the headlines that we're dealing with a spiritual war, except that we want to go back to year zero and erase the kingdom of Yahweh as instituted by the crucifixion of a Jew by the name of Yeshua, Jesus. That's just made up, right? The person who wrote that article for Legal Insurrection doesn't mention the Bible anywhere in there, but understands that there is a spiritual truth here. These people want to go back to the year zero so they can remake this world. We need an intifada so we can remake the United States according to secular humanism, which is not secular. How many of these progressives have said man as his own God? We have read their words on this show. Honor the threat. If they say they see man as his own God, take them at their word, especially when they act that way. But understand that these people don't mean capital M man as his own God. They mean them as your God. Divine right kings are back in the forefront here. They're just not called kings anymore. Now they're called presidents or CEOs. It hasn't changed. Same spirit. Now, back to your homework. Next story. This is from Mideast Journal. It's 29 April 2024. Jenna Romano is the dateline. Who is pulling the strings behind the pro-Palestinian protests in the U.S.? This is a good piece of journalism to the extent that that's possible these days. It goes over what's going on, but then it says who is organizing these pro-Palestinian protests. First things first, Students for Justice in Palestine. And she gives you a history of them, and you come down here and who's funding them. She says, because the organization is not registered as a 501c3 nonprofit, there is not much financial information they are required to disclose. Pro-Israel organizations believe that this group is supported by the anti-Israel organization American Muslims for Palestine, which is known to have ties with pro-Hamas individuals. The second group, Jewish Voice for Peace. Okay, so I want you to understand something real quick. You're going to find this group a lot. This is like saying progressives for the American way as the founding fathers wanted it. It's an oxymoron. I know it's a vulgar term for a lot of folks, but a Jewish Voice for Peace where they want to help the Palestinians is like fornicating for chastity. You're shooting yourself in the head. And yet, that's what's going on here, according to this article, according to everything I've found from this group. Based in the U.S., Jewish Voice for Peace, was formed in 1996 and today is the self-proclaimed largest progressive Jewish anti-Zionist organization in the world. We're going to see in a little bit, anti-Zionist means anti-Israel. And therefore left-wing Jewish activists. They are an anti-Zionist movement that also supports the boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign against Israel. At the same time, the group rejects the idea that their organization is anti-Semitic. What we mean is anti-Jew. You cannot reject the Jewish nation, which is identified with being a Jew, part and parcel. If you understand Judaism, Israel and Judaism go hand in hand. You cannot separate the two. If you understand your Bible, faith in Yahweh and Israel go hand in hand. They cannot be separated. So if you are working to destroy Israel, you are working to destroy Yahweh's people. I don't care what you say. That is by the definition in the scriptures. If you curse Israel, it doesn't mean just the physical land, the holy land of Israel. It means if you curse Yahweh's people, but also it is connected to the land. So if you curse them, you will be cursed in kind. Well, that's what's going on here. This article will go down and tell you who funds them too. Their reported revenue is nearly 2.1 million. Most organizations' funding come through individual contributions, but it is also known to take hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations. The Caffin Foundation, Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and Open Society Policy Center. That's a George Soros organization. Here's another organization behind this. If Not Now, a movement of American Jews organizing our community to end U.S. support for Israel's apartheid and demands equality, justice, and thriving future for all Palestinians and Israel. Apartheid, Israeli apartheid. We're going to get to that in a little bit. That right there is a lie. That's not misinformation. That's a lie. And we'll get to that in a minute. Just like anti-Semitism, more equivocation, more stupidity, that muddled thinking And it says, who funds this? Middle East Peace 1630 Fund and the Tides Network. Tides, George Soros. So George Soros, a Jew who has had problems with his own people from the beginning, is behind both of these Jews Against Israel organizations. Whoa, spooky dude. He works for the enemy, folks. Satan, the devil. There's another group within our life that tells you who funds those. This is who funds them down here. A couple of American millionaires. Number 5, Party for Socialism and Liberation. Okay, that's another one behind all this. And then number 6, Palestinian Youth Movement. Tells you who's behind that. Number 7, Samaduan, or whatever the heck that is. This is a pro-Palestinian protest organization called for defense and in Canada. So this is more anti-Western world. Another story in your headlines. Longtime Israeli policy foes are leading U.S. protests against Israel action in Gaza. Who are they? This is the AP. Is updated on November 16th, 2023. It's by David Crary. And the one person they want to focus on, one of the Jewish Voice for Peace. That's who they want to focus on. See, so even Jews are for this propaganda. You got to support the Palestinians. Even the Jews are for this. They want no. George Soros wants to eliminate Israel. And then here's Liberty Nation, free thinking, free speech. This is who's behind the pro-Palestinian protests. It says something is rotten and it's not coming from Denmark. The dateline is Lisa K. Donner, October 24th, 2023. And she goes over this too. This is primary organizers of pro-Palestinian protests. She finds some new people. This one here is Microsoft. It's MSNBC or MSN News or whatever the heck it is. It's a story by Sina. Doesn't tell you what day it is. It says a look at who is organizing the pro-Palestinian protests in the U.S. And if you read it, they like to focus on the same people. You know, the Jews are all for this. Another story from the same source, different author. It's the same thing. This seems to be wanting to pro-Palestinian movements to Jewish organizations that are in favor of helping the Palestinians. NBC News, who's behind the pro-Palestinian protests that are disrupting Biden's campaign events and blocking city streets? Oh, poor Biden. See, folks, real quick, Biden is helping to fund this crap. But NBC News wants you to think he's a victim of this mess. As you're going to see in a minute, nay, he's not a victim of this. And if he is, it's just his own eating themselves. This is his fault. And I don't mean just Biden's. This is Obama Biden's fault. Yeah. We'll go there later in another time. I don't even want to read this. If this is actually disrupting Biden's campaign strategies, poor baby. Wah. From the New York Post, pro-Palestinian protests sponsor have raked in $9 million in New York City taxpayer funds. Yes, you can read the story. They tell you where they come from. It's indirect, but the taxpayers are funding it from New York City. And then this is the Washington Examiner, also on MSN News or whatever. Democrat dark money giant behind anti-Israel protest has scored $81 million taxpayer dollars. What? Yes. The Tide Sender, which funds organizations behind Hamas sympathetic protests held after the terrorist faction's deadly October 7 attack against Israel, has long helped shape the progressive agenda with the financial backing of billionaire philanthropists such as Bill Gates and George Soros. But the Democratic allied charity, sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars assets, also retains another key supporter in the federal government, which directly or through subwards steered more than $81.2 million to the Tide Center between 2006 and 2023, documents show. If you are a Democrat-aligned charity, you are not a charity. You are a political organ of that political party that is taking taxpayer money. That right there is a violation of RICO statutes that should end the Democratic corporation. It should outlaw anybody who was ever in the Democratic Party as a representative or any position of leadership or administration should be permanently banned from public office and more than likely jailed. But we're not going to do a dang thing about it. It's too late. They own the system that would have to police them. And when you say, well, you're the bad guys, they go, no pin here. Say, send the FBI to get them. And the FBI goes, oh, I looked high and low. I didn't find anybody doing any. Oh, wait a minute. We found that Trump guy. Yeah, but Trump's trying to stop all the crap you're doing. Oh, no, he's the bad guy. Well, how come he isn't in jail? You've been after this now for a better part of 8 years. You can't put him in jail yet. Oh, well, he's just that slippery. No, he isn't. You got nothing on him. If you did, you'd have executed him by now. Which, by the way, the mainstream media is starting to post stories about leftists saying that, well, you know, if we're not careful, poor Trump, he's going to get killed. That's a hint, folks. And it's meant to silence Donald. Tell him, hey, you know, we only got one thing left since we can't convict you through the kangaroo courts. You got no proof of any of this, Joe. No. I have left-wing secular humanist patterns throughout history since Marx invented this crap. That has always been their pattern. So you're right. I've got no proof. Yes?
I seem to remember a show with somebody holding the head of Donald Trump.
Yeah, but crazy redheaded leftist.
Yeah, honor the
and
threat.
Nothing happened to her. Yes.
Sometime.
Honor the threat. Yeah, and nothing happened to her. And the only one that's done this. There have been several prominent Democrats, politicians, and quote-unquote entertainers who have done that. What do you think would happen if I'd have held up a bloody stumped head of Barack Obama and made a joke? Think I'd still be here? Bet you I wouldn't. So this is not a charity. This is how another way to steal money from the taxpayers of America and funnel it in the Democratic Party, who then uses it to destroy the taxpayers of America. This is another story from the New York Post. It says, meet the American millionaire Marxists funding the anti-Israel rallies. And there they are. It'll tell you who they are. The Neville Roy Singham and his wife, Jody Evans. Those were the two millionaires that we just mentioned funding the rallies. Then we also have groups behind Israel bashing protests. Attacks got 15 million plus from Soros, and it tells you where that money comes from. This is MSN News that's quoting that same story right there from the New York Post. But then we have PolitiFact. It says, no, George Soros and his foundations are not paying people to protest. Okay, so we don't have to worry about this anymore. PolitiFact said he's not doing it, except the one little problem with that is PolitiFact is not reliable. Well, how do I know that? Well, if you read down here through Quora, there's a gentleman here who told you who pays for PolitiFact. They are owned by the Poynton Institute, who receives funding from the U.S. government. PolitiFact is getting money from the government. And George Soros Open Society, who funds other fact checkers. They're getting money from Facebook and Google and the Gates Foundation. In other words, PolitiFact is a left-wing propaganda organization telling you that George Soros isn't giving them money, even though they tell you that he is. It's, source, the link that guy put up on Quora, that's a link to PolitiFact's list of where they get their money. PolitiFact tells you that they get money from George Soros, but no, George Soros isn't giving money to the protesters. Bull crap. Bull. I've brought this up before. I've got to make this clip so that we can play it over and over again. This is from NCIS when Gibbs is chasing the terrorist by the name of Pin. And Pin's boat. Pin's turned the boat into a bomb. And the government officials they don't want to do anything about it because they don't think Pin's on the boat. They told Gibbs, they said, hey, look, we've asked the boat. Is Pin there? And Gibbs says, he's the communication officer. You send him the fax asking if he's seen this guy, and he takes it and shreds it and replies to you, no pin here. You're asking the guilty party to convict themselves. No, they're not going to do that. So political George Soros funding the protests? Oh, no. No, the government and Gates and Soros is funding these protests, and PolitiFact is there to tell you, no, they're not. And what does the majority of the population in this country do? Laps it up and believes it because it's PolitiFact. I mean, it says fact. You got to believe it. It wouldn't say fact. You couldn't post that if it wasn't true. Excuse me. This is all just. This is driving me crazy, folks. The National Post, NP View, the pro-Hamas puppet masters behind the pro-Palestinian protests. Jew hatred is at an all-time high, but is being masked as sympathy for Gazans. Ding, 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 ding. True. Nailed it. That's what's going on. We'll prove that in a minute. Let's go to Europe. They'll help us out with this a little bit. It says, we've built something extraordinary. 6 months of UK pro-Palestinian marches. That's one of the protest people saying, oh, this is awesome. See, and you get a little blog here, Palestinian Solidarity Campaign National Protest. This is about what's happening in England. And this spread from the US to England. And then here's another story from Yahoo News. Who are the 6 groups organizing the pro-Palestinian protests in England? Well, these groups we just read about are international in scope. Say what? Yeah, they're international, man. They're funding all of this stuff across the globe. Why? Don't know, man. I guess it's because, they just want the Gazans to be free. The Gazans, supposedly Palestinians, free? They are free. The trouble that they're in right now is self-inflicted. They voted for this government that attacked Israel. If you're the short little weakling kid on the block and you keep poking the bully in the nose and getting your butt whipped, and then you go cry to the whole neighborhood, the bully's beating me up, look what he did. But in this case, you poked him in the nose first. He wasn't doing anything to you. He was leaving you alone. You started the fight. You're not a victim. And society has a duty to research this before they go believing this victimhood card. It does not apply. Now, let's look into we'll get back to the homework in a minute. I want to go to some definitions. Remember Friday's show? Let's look at definitions. Friday's show. Terrorism. This is from Encyclopedia Britannica. All of your definitions I'm about to give you come from the Encyclopedia Britannica. You go to your homework. I have posted the definitions in there, and I linked you. The word of the, like terrorism in your homework is linked to Encyclopedia Britannica. It says, it is calculated use of violence to create a general climate of fear in a population and thereby to bring about a particular political objective. Terrorism has been practiced by political organizations with both rights and lefts objectives, by nationalistic and religious groups, by revolutionaries, and even by state institutions such as armies, intelligence services, and police. Okay, the only reason it says the right terrorism is because they consider fascists to be right-wing. That is incorrect. Usually, if you see somebody using terrorism, that is not on the right. On the right, you find true libertarians, live and let lives, not anarchists. Anarchists are not libertarians. They think they are. They'll tell you they are. They're not. Anarchists are the dictatorship of every individual in the world, where they're all their own king and listen to them. A true libertarian will leave you be and will be against terrorism. So set that aside. Where are we at right now? Have you seen any stories in the news about universities claiming, well, we've got to shut down all of these things, and we can't have these speakers, and we can't do this, and we can't do that. We've got to send the Jews home to study by, home study, all because of these protests. That's a political objective, and it's being instituted because of, quote unquote, protecting people. Fear. This is not a protest. This is terrorism by definition. These people are domestic terrorists. Has the quote unquote mainstream media, in other words, the government's propaganda organ, has it called them domestic terrorists? No. But it called the January 6th people domestic terrorists. What were they doing? They were gathering outside the Capitol peacefully. They weren't caught, oh, Joe, we saw the riots. Those weren't the protesters. Those were the government agents. We now know that. And certain people within the crowd were incited, entrapped by the government agents. We now know that. This has come out. That's true. January 6th was a wag the dog, but we're still told that those are violent protests. Tea Party were called domestic terrorists. I'm a domestic terrorist because of this flag, per the government's own rules. I'm not looking to use violence to institute my political changes. I don't meet the definition of terrorism. These Palestinian groups do. But we don't do, the government won't do anything against them. Why? Because the Palestinian, quote unquote, protests, BLM, Antifa, Occupy, all work for the unity. Yes, if you're a Republican, you're supporting this. Yes, you are. No, Joe, I don't. Yes, you are. You give your money and or your vote to the Republican Party. You support this. There are no good Nazis. You know what that means. If you support the Nazi party, you cannot claim to be the good Nazi. You supported the party. If you're supporting the Uniparty, you're not innocent. If you don't like that, change. Otherwise, learn it, live it, love it. Second definition, Semite. I want you to pay attention. I hate, well, you're anti-Semitic. That is whenever I hear somebody tell me, well, this person's anti-Semite or you're an anti-Semite, you know what I hear? I have a very ignorant person talking to me. Not stupid, ignorant, uneducated. Semite, a name given in the 19th century to a member of any people who speak one of the Semitic languages, which is a family of languages spoken primarily in parts of Western Asia and Africa. The term, therefore, came to include Arabs, Akkadians, Canaanites, Hebrews, and some Ethiopians, including the Amhara and Tigrians or whatever, and Arab tribes. It's connected to language. Does anybody remember the class I gave you on racism where I told you that once upon a time, race was defined by your language, not your skin color? When did all this change? With Marx. Karl freaking, I'm not a racist, Marx. Yes, you are a racist. You are also anti-Jew, even though you were a Jew. Jew, they may be Semitic, but if you're a Jew who only speaks English, you're not Semitic. By definition. So if I'm against Jews, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm anti-Judaism, which means I'm anti-Bible. Oh, wait a minute. Charlie, what's the word for being against the Bible? The Torah is Torah made flesh. So there's a word for that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Antichrist?
We usually call it Antichrist, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And since Christ is Yahweh in some way, shape, or form, it's also anti-Yahweh, isn't it?
Yes.
Which would put you on whose team? Team Satan or Team Yahweh?
Hasatan.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Thanks, Charlie. I appreciate that. I want to make sure I had that straight. So by definition, Semitic, it's a language, which would mean that if you're anti-Muslim, you're anti-Semite. I could care less about the language you speak. I'm looking at your politics, people. The next one, Remember, Israel's practicing apartheid, right? Oh, boy, am I going to love this one. Let me throw up a story here real quick so we get ready for it. All right. Apartheid, again, from the Encyclopedia Britannica. Policy governed relations, a policy that governed relations between South Africa's white minority and non-white majority for much of the latter half of the 20th century, sanctioning racial segregation and political and economic discrimination against non-whites. Although the legislation that formed the foundation of apartheid had been repealed by the early 1990s, the social and economic repercussions of the discriminatory policy persisted into the 21st century. Typically, an apartheid is a minority oppressing a majority. That's how we apply it today, because what we've done is we've used logical extension. Apartheid was in South Africa. Now we say it's anybody who's racially oppressing somebody else, right? Right? That's pretty much how we've got a little problem with this. Again, Israel doesn't meet the definition of apartheid. This is look at here. Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, not exactly a liberty organization. This is a left wing as you can get. This is Carol Quigley stuff. This is the New World Order, people. This is what to know about the Arab citizens of Israel. New World Order people, the people behind these protests, are going to give you an article here. It says Arabs comprise just over 20% of Israel's population. In other words, they're a minority. Of Israel's population, they're a minority. And that means apartheid doesn't work. Because to be apartheid, it's supposed to be the majority. A minority oppresses the majority. What we have here is exactly the opposite. It says the vast majority are citizens, Israeli citizens, while those in Jerusalem, which Israel claims as its capital, are considered permanent residents. Arab citizens have the same legal rights as Jewish Israelis, but they tend to live in poorer cities, have less formal education, and face other challenges that experts attribute to structural discrimination. Or they reject the culture that, if they were to embrace, would lift them up out of poverty, just like certain social groups within the United States. No, it's racism in the U.S. No, it isn't. It's culture. It's always culture in this case. Arab political parties have long struggled to gain Wait a minute. To gain representation? You mean you're allowed to have an Arab political party in Israel? Yes. Which means, according to the CFR, there's no apartheid in Israel. Doesn't meet the definition. I thought there was apartheid and Holocaust and racial. Nope. No. Not according to the definition. Zionism. You know, anti-Zionists. We're just anti-Zionists. We're not anti-Semite. Yeah, you're right. You're not anti those who speak Semitic languages. You're just anti-Zionist. Okay. Zionism, a Jewish nationalist movement that has had its goal to create and support a Jewish national state in Palestine. Palestine is a region, not a nation. The ancient homeland of the Jews. What? Even Encyclopedia Britannica admits that that region is the ancient homeland of the Jews. In Hebrew, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. It says those originated in Eastern and Central Europe in the latter part of the 19th century. It is in many ways a continuation of the ancient attachment of the Jews and of the Jewish religion to the historical region of Palestine, where one of the hills of the ancient Jerusalem was called Zion, Mount Moriah, the Temple freaking Mount. So the world knows that that is not the ancient land of the Palestines, because the Palestinians, as we're about to see, aren't a people. And if they are, they're not from Canaan. What? Yeah, didn't know that one, did you? Going to prove it. Just a minute. Using quote unquote secular sources. The point to make right now at this point is, if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Israel, which makes you anti-Jew, anti-House of anti-Hebrew, anti-Christian. Now, if you're a Christian who rejects the Jews, you're not a follower of the Messiah. You're not a disciple. Yes, I'm telling you, you're not a Christian. Yes, I am. Well, Joe, see that right there. I don't want to listen to you. I'm just quoting the book. The what? The book. The Bible. Yes, sir.
Wasn't Yeshua, Jesus, a Jew?
Shh. He
Oh, oops. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
And who did he go to? Charlie, come back. Come back, Charlie. He's a Jew who sent his disciples to who? To other Jews?
Well, to other Jews and then to the house of Israel,
Which are Hebrews,
which are Hebrews, yes.
not Jews.
Technically not, right.
But Jews are Hebrews.
That is correct.
So he renounced his Judaism, but not his Hebrewism, even though Jews are Hebrews.
Yeah, he didn't
What
reject
he
the Jews.
What he rejected was Judaism, the Pharisees'
He
religion.
he did reject that.
And he would reject your Christian religion too, folks, for the same exact reasons.
Yes, he would.
You've added to and taken away from the law.
Yeah.
Exactly what he accused the Pharisees of doing.
Yeah, there's some scripture about that too, talking about, crying Lord, Lord and stuff, and yeah.
All right, let's get to a few other things here real quick. Yep. Boop. Charlie is being Natasha today. Before we go anywhere, let's do this. This is from Bible Archaeology Society. It says Jews and Arabs descended from Canaanites. Really? This is what happens when you call yourself Bible archaeologists and you don't believe the Bible. This is when you go down and you read it, they'll say, well, what we did is we took examined the DNA of 93 bodies recovered from archaeological sites around the southern Levant, the land of Canaan in the Bible. And we compared them and we say, well, they're all the same. So Canaanites and Jews are the same. Really? Before we even get going any further, let me explain to you how bad the science here is. Where do those bodies come from? Are those Jewish bodies? Are those Hebrew bodies? Are those Canaanite bodies? Are they Egyptian bodies? Are they Assyrian bodies? Are they Babylonian bodies? And how do you... Oh, what's that got to do with anything, Joe? They came from the region. That don't matter. If you're trying to prove that the Jews and the Arabs are descended from the same Canaanite people, first thing you're going to have to do with these 93 bodies is prove you've got a sample of the group you're trying to... See, you made an assumption. And in this case, you made an ass out of yourself. Did I say that? And you did that because you didn't pay attention to the rest of the information available to you. And that's probably because you were wanting to make a political point, not a scientific one. Why do I say this? Well, let's go to another story. Get rid of that one. Go to this one. Assyrian deportation and resettlement, the story of Samaria, northern kingdom of Israel. Oh, what? The Assyrians conquered the kingdom of Israel and deported many of the residents of Samaria and its surroundings to other Assyrian provinces and brought deportees from other conquered territories to Samaria to take their place. Evacuations at Tel Hadid, near Lod in Israel, have unearthed material remains that contribute to our understanding of these transformative years. So those 93 bodies might have been from a different part of the world. Which would mean that, oh my gosh, Iranians are from the same part of the world as the Canaanites. Iranians and Canaanites. Or in that case, Persians and Babylonians. And even maybe people from the steppe came from Canaan. Oh, this is so exciting. You see the stupidity here? What happened in that area, it happened twice. It happened after the conquest of the northern kingdom. And then it happened when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians conquered the southern kingdom. In both cases, what would happen is the kings of those conquering nations would take people out of your country and put people from other conquered nations into your country. And usually what they did is they took the leadership of the conquered countries and put it into your country so that the people in your old country no longer have their elite. And the people of the country that they just conquered, where they're switching populations, they're taking the leaders and swapping them from nations. So when I pull all the leadership of the Jews out of Judea, out of the Jewish land from Babylon, and I give you a whole bunch of leaders from conquered nations and wherever, well, then the people who are left in Judea, they're not going to follow these leaders. Just like that's what's going to happen when I take the Jewish leaders out and I put them in the conquered nation where those leaders came. So nobody wants to listen to anybody, and you don't have to worry about uprisings. That's what they were doing. But guess what happens when you do that? You've just screwed up the DNA. So you don't know who come from where. And when they did this study from the Levant, they didn't compare it to any other DNA in the rest of the Mesopotamian basin. And if they had, what they would have found is, oh my God, all these people come from the same 3 or 4 lineages. You know, like the 3 sons of Noah. Duh, just like what the Bible would have told them they were going to find. So science isn't going to help you. Not that way. You're going to have to do some, oh my God, research. Gee, if I do a little research, what am I going to find? Well, one of the things I'm going to find is that the forefather of the Hebrew people, you know, the Jews, is Abraham. At the time, his name was Abram. He comes from a place called Sumer, whatever, down there in the bottom right where it says number 1. And then he settles over there in that place called Canaan. But I thought he was the same people as the Canaanites. Well, the Canaanites were already there, supposedly, right? So somehow or another, I guess he was a Canaanite that moved to Sumer or to Ur and then had to come back. See, the science is stupid because it's based on, we don't believe the Bible, so let's rationalize. Anybody who's read the Bible, the book of Genesis, knew real quick that as a people group, the only connection between Abram and the Hebrews and the Canaanites would have to come through Noah and his sons. But we know that those are 2 different people groups because Abram comes from Shem and Canaan comes from Ham. And those are 2 genetic lineages, 2 different mothers too, if I remember correctly. Or might be the same mother, but still different. They're not the same people. And even if they are, well, that would make sense too, because they came from the same paternal parents then. You can't use science this way. You're going to have to use different type of investigative techniques to prove who's what and who's related to who and where they came from. And we're going to do that when we come back. We'll take the break just a little early today. When we come back, oh boy, am I going to show you some cool little things. This is what happens with our news headlines. All of this is known. None of this is ever reported in these stories. We report stories today in the news as though they happen in a vacuum and they sprouted up just yesterday. Everything that happens today is driven by yesterday, and this is why these people have to destroy the past. You destroy the past so nobody can show that you're a liar. That's what it's about. So Satan and his henchmen have to always destroy the past. Remember what Orwell said. Who controls today controls the past. Who controls the past can control the future. Progressives. Always looking to erase what was or to recast it in a different light, lie about it, twist it, spin it. Never able to deal with capital T truth right out in the open and then convince you to either fix things or choose a different path rationally. No, they're always going to lie to you and then use emotion, deception, haste, fear. Oh, wait a minute. Progressives are always threatening action and violence to create fear to achieve political objectives. It's just like, if you don't vote for us, the Republicans are going to take away grandma's Social Security and she's going to die. That's fear of violence. It's a different form of violence, but it is fear of violence. Or, you're not going to get any medical help because the right is just so mean. You won't be able to get the right to be treated by somebody. That's not right, but, they say it is. Fear. Fear to make you vote in their way. In other words, surrender yourself to them. Become a good slave to those who want to control you. Well, they mean well. Yeah. What's that quote? They may mean to govern well, but make no doubt on this, they mean to govern, which means rule. It's all about control. So they want to control what you understand about what's going on in Palestine. It's not Palestine, folks. It's the Holy Land, the Promised Land, and it belongs to Abram. Well, no, it was originally the Canaanites. No, it wasn't. Canaan, the son of Ham, the illegitimate son of Ham, well, bastard son of Ham in a way. It was more than likely of an incestuous relationship with his mother. When lots were drawn to see who was going to get what land as they spread across the face of the earth, Canaan was originally supposed to go to Shem and Shem's descendants. It was stolen land from the beginning. But even if it wasn't, it was lost in a war of conquest that originally wasn't necessary. Because if you read the history book, the Bible, it tells us that the kings of Canaan told the Hebrews that they had the permission of the Canaanites, the Palestinians, to land. And then later, they rescinded it because they got jealous and envious. And they started the war to begin with. So in that end result there, Canaan lost its right to be a nation. The Philistines, Palestinians, they lost their right to be a nation because of a war of aggression in which the Hebrews defeated them out of self-defense. And in any form of international law from then to now, that means that land rightly belongs to the Hebrews and has ever since. Especially if you're going to go with the fact that it was given to them by Yahweh, creator of the universe. We're going to go to a 6-minute break. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We'll continue from there. See you then. All right, we've got a lot to cover still, so let's just jump right back in it. Remember, we were talking about Abram before he becomes Abraham, moved to the land of Canaan. The land of Canaan is connected to the man Canaan, the son of Ham, who produced him by having relations with his mother. That's a whole other thing. We've talked about it before in the past. I can, if you want, email me, I'll explain it to you. But that's what it means by uncovering your father's nakedness. It talks about his mom. He had relations with his mom, had a son. Okay, that's where Canaan comes from. We're going to be in Bible right now, but we're in the Bible's history books. This is Numbers, chapter 33, verse 55 from the NASB translation. It says, "But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from you, drive out the Canaanites, then it will come about that those whom you let remain of them will be like thorns in your eyes and like pricks in your sides, and they will trouble you in the land in which you live. In other words, the Canaanites cause the Israelites problems. In later parts of the scripture, it tells us that they're going to be with Israel forever. No matter where Israel is, you're going to have these Canaanites giving you trouble. Well, who the heck are the Canaanites? Well, we've already covered that, and that's where your supposed Palestinians come from, is that area. But I want you to look at a pattern here. They're derived from an incestuous relationship. Well, then who are the Ammonites, Moabites, and Edom in the Bible? More trouble. These are all described as enemies of Yahweh in the Bible. But if you come down here, who are the Moabites? The Moabites are said to have descended from Moab, the son of Lot and his oldest daughter. So they come from an incestuous relationship. Just like the Ammonites, they are described as being descendant of Ben-Ami, who is the son of Lot, Abram's nephew, and Lot's younger daughter. So another incestuous relationship. Canaan, the Ammonites, and the Moabites, all from incestuous relationships. And then who are the Edomites? These are descendants of Esau, who sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. These are all enemies of Yahweh, the God of the Bible, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they are going to, now they're not Canaanites, but they're going to get wrapped up in a different people group. They're and we're going to be getting into a few other things here. We'll get to it in a minute. For what I want to do now is, this is history in the Bible, and it pertains to today. Don't tune out. This is where today's show is going to start getting good. This is what? Oh, gosh, 4,500 years ago, somewhere in that area, 4,000, 4,500, whatever, 3,500, whatever you want to count it. Depends on the calendar you're using, but this is eons ago. It is driving today. This headline I started the show with today about how we're going to use a Palestinian intifada to overthrow the United States. That comes from this picture right here. And the thorn in the side of Yahweh's people. In the center, we have Abraham and his wife Sarah and his son Isaac and wife Rebekah, Jacob, Esau. Esau, remember the Edomites? But the ones on Jacob, those are the 12 tribes of Israel, later divided into 13. On the left, however, the illegitimate son of Abraham and Hagar, they're going to have Ishmael, who is promised by, as you'll see in a minute, by Yahweh, to become a nation with 12 sons, 12 kings, which later there'll be a 13th added. The sons of promise come from Isaac. The illegitimate come from Ishmael. Why is this important? Well, first of all, let's look at this. Get this thing to do what it's supposed to do for me. Jacob's sons, these are the different tribes of Israel. And this is where they settle. Now, on the left is where they were supposed to have settled. Notice that little purple area there, Judah, which we call today Jews. But on the right, this is what they actually did. Notice that up on the top, you have Phoenicia. They didn't entirely eradicate the Phoenicians like they were supposed to. And on the left down on the bottom, the Philistia. They didn't entirely eradicate the Philistines like they were supposed to. So what do we have here? Philistines are Palestine. Phoenicia is Lebanon. Who's been causing trouble, so much trouble, since Israel became a nation again in 1947-48? Lebanon and the Philistines, the Palestinians. Thorn in their side forever and ever, just like prophesied. Amazing, huh? Well, not if you're reading the Bible. Why do they have this trouble? Because they didn't do what they were told. Now, on that picture on your right, look to the right. You see the area Edom, Moab, and Ammon. All enemies of Yahweh. But now to the right of that, we've got different enemies of Yahweh. We'll get to that in a minute. This is what happens later when the two kingdoms of Israel separate. Now you have Israel and Judah. The house of Israel, the house of Judah. Jews and what's? Well, this is what we call the lost tribes. The house of Israel is called the lost tribes. But are they lost? Not according to Josephus. That's an argument we're not going to get into today. The point is that this area here that we call Israel, that's Israel in the picture, that gets re-inhabited with other people that are neither Canaanites, Philistines, Phoenicians, none of that. They come from off to what we would think of today as Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Persia, Iran, that area from the stands. So if you are a modern day descendant of what you a modern day Canaanite, Palestinian or Lebanese or whatever, you might be, but you're more than likely genetically from a different part of the Middle East altogether. You're more than likely, most likely, if you're claiming your lineage there as a Canaanite, as a Philistine or a Lebanese, then you're more than likely Persian of some sort. Persian, Babylonian, Assyrian, Turkish. You're not from the Canaanite region. Or you could be from a different people group. Genesis 16, verses 10 through 12. We're still doing history. Pay attention to me, please. The angel of Yahweh also said to her, now, by the way, the angel of Yahweh is talking to Hagar, the handmaid of Sarah, the illegitimate, concubine for Abraham to make Ishmael. And this is what this is about. This is about Ishmael. Now, why is this important right here? Well, this is important to us because, well, first of all, the angel of Yahweh, more than likely Jesus, the Messiah. There's reasons for that. But what's he say? He says, the angel of Yahweh says to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants so that they will be too many to count. The angel of Yahweh said to her further, behold, you are pregnant, and you will give birth to a son, and name him Ishmael, because Yahweh has heard your affliction. But he will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. Sorry, I got the camera in my way. And he will live in defiance of all his brothers. So Ishmael. Notice first that the angel says, I will. That's something Yahweh has to do. So the angel is somehow, way, shape, form, or another Yahweh. Same angel of Yahweh who's in of smoke and fire from Exodus story. But this is a prophecy of Ishmael and all his descendants. Yeah. This is prophecy of what he and his people are going to be like, the Ishmaelites. So Genesis 17, verses 20 through 21. As for Ishmael, this is Yahweh speaking again, I have heard you. He's talking to Hagar again. Behold, I will bless him and make him fruitful and multiply him exceedingly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation, a single nation. 12 princes. Hold on to that. It doesn't say 12 sons. It says 12 princes. Hold on to that for a second. Now look at the verse 21. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this season. Oh, wait a minute. This is Yahweh talking to Abraham. My bad, not Hagar. But still. 12 princes. Now, this is the land that Ishmael's sons inhabit. Down here, this green line, the 12 tribes of Ishmael, from Shur to Havilim or Havilah or whatever. Arabia, Saudi Arabia. The Ishmaelite become Islam. How many of you remember my class on Islam? Talking about the 12 imams? And there were originally, the 3 original ones were not of the blood lineage of Muhammad. So they were pulled up by the roots and discarded by the little horn, the first bloodline, who was a kid. He was 14. So he said those first 3 after Muhammad never existed. They don't exist. And he was a little kid. And we have one imam who has not been yet, the 12th imam, the one they're waiting for, their Mahdi, hasn't come yet. Fits scripture very well if you're reading the book of Revelation. But all I'm looking at is parallels, the number, the patterns of 12. And princes usually in scripture, in the prophetic language, and we're dealing with prophecy, refer to spiritual beings, not men. Usually. I got a feeling what you're dealing with here is Islam. Because eventually it gets the Ishmaelites get mixed up with the people called Arabs. Arab literally in Aramaic, it literally means does not mix, doesn't get along, doesn't play well with others. So when I went to the Bible dictionary and Bible Gateway, I looked this up. This is Arabians and Arabs in the Bible. In the time of the patriarchs, Arabian tribes. In the time of Moses, the Midianites. In the time of Gideon, the Midianite raids. And they're already wearing crescent jewelry by that time. During the United Kingdom of Israel, Sheba. Sheba came to visit Solomon, right? During the kingdom of Judah and Israel, Kedar. The Persian period, Kedar, Minians, Kataban, Hardamrit. 5th century BC, the 1st century AD, Nabateans. The Arab culture in the Bible, ancient Arab religion, biography, Arabs. Why is that important to me? Am I being racist right now? Well, no. Arabs will eventually become Muslim, but they're not Ishmaelites. They get swirled together and they will take over the Holy Land, which means that if you're claiming to be Lebanese or a Palestinian, now you don't know whether or not you're an Ishmaelite, an Arab from ancient area that we know of today as Turkey, Assyria, that area, or up in that area, Turkish area, Iraq, northern Iraq. We don't know if you're from Syria or from Persia, which today would be Iran. You don't know. You could be an ancient Canaanite. You don't know because you were never a people to begin with. You were just a bunch of come from a different clans that was a hodgepodge mix of ethnic lineages. And I got a little news, folks. This applies to the Jews and the Hebrews as well, because they did a lot of intermarrying. So they have the same. The point here is, folks, there are no races here. It's not a race. So if you're anti-Semite, you're against the language, not the people. Now, the protests are not against a language, people speaking. That's not what that is. It's not against a people of color. It's against a religion. They're anti-Jewish. They're against that faith, that religion. They're against those trying to keep the Torah, the teachings of Yahweh. For as badly as they do it, they're still trying to cling to the laws of Moses. That's what this is. This is the spirit of Antichrist attacking Yahweh's people wherever they find them. Now, we're going to grab the third rail. One of my all-time favorite sites when I'm dealing with Islam. I'm going to share it with you right now. I'm putting it into the comment section, and I'll share it. If Charlie wants to, he can throw this into the permanent comment on Rumble, because I didn't throw this site into your homework. We're going to quote from the Quran. This is Muhammad. This is the Quran, Surah 544. It's kind of like chapter and verse in the Quran. It says, surely we revealed the Torah. We, meaning Allah and Muhammad. The Torah is the Torah. It's the Old Testament Bible. It says, surely we revealed the Old Testament, in which was guidance and light. With it, the prophets who submitted themselves. Da, 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 da. So Muhammad says the Bible is guidance and light. 2 verses later, Surah 546. And we sent after them in their footsteps Isa, son of Maria, Miriam, verifying what was before him as the Torah, the Jewish Torah, and we gave him the Injil, the Christian Gospels, in which was guidance and light, and verifying what was before it as Torah and guidance and admonitions for those who guard against evil. In other words, in 2 verses in the Quran, Muhammad verified that the Old and New Testament are guidance and light, and that Jesus was a forebearer of this. He brought the message. And then in Surah 46:12, we are told, and before it, the book of Musa, the book of Moses, the Torah, was a guide and a mercy. And this is a book verifying it in the Arabic language, that it is a way, that it may warn those who are unjust and is good news for the doers of good. Okay, so what did that mean? That means Muhammad just told you that the Quran was, this is early in his religion. There's not much Quran at this point. But he just told you that the Quran verifies in the Aramaic language the Bible. In other words, it's the Aramaic version saying, yep, the Bible is goodness and light and truth. Why did that change? It changed because the Jews started laughing, taunting, and mocking Muhammad. Up until that point, he was trying to win them over to himself and be recognized as one of their prophets. And they rejected him because he didn't meet the definitions of a prophet according to the Bible. We'll get to that in a minute. So he rejects them. And that's when he turns against Jews and Christians. And he starts a war against them, holy war. And that right there is the Jewish Palestine, today modern Israeli Jewish / Palestinian / Lebanese / Muslim war. It is and has always been religious war, based on the fact that Muhammad took offense that he was rejected as a prophet. And he himself originally said he was no prophet. And he continues to say he's not a prophet all the way to the end of his life. But we teach that on Islam. It says, on 2 occasions in the Quran, Muhammad admitted he could not do miracles to show any sort of divinity or divine calling. Surah 1790 through 95 and 3:183. This is Surah 1790 through 94. This is a quote of the Quran, tells about how when Muhammad was challenged, well, not a quote here yet, but it tells about when he was challenged to perform a miracle by the Jews and prove he was from the true Elohim of the universe. He could not perform any. And here in the Quran, he says, am I anything but a man, a messenger? In other words, I can't do miracles. So in Surah 29:27, that clearly states that as far as Allah, the Quran's God, is concerned, the only true prophets are those related to Isaac and Jacob. And Muhammad, according to Muslim tradition, related to Ishmael, not Isaac or Jacob. And this is true. In the Hadith, Muhammad repeatedly boasts that he is the closest in lineage and spiritual likeness and physical image to Ishmael of all the Muslims. And nor did Muhammad ever claim to prophesy. So in the Quran and the Hadith, which is a collection of sayings and traditions and customs of Muhammad, Muhammad disqualifies himself as a prophet. And he claims that he's of the bastard, illegitimate lineage of Ishmael. Biblically, this is a problem. But this right here, folks, jealousy and envy, This is spiritual and human, is what is going on in the Middle East right now, which leaves you, and you put it all together, you shake well. How's your spiritual warfare going here, folks? Now, I've left you with something. Let me get us over here. I left you with something in your homework today. It is, now, first of all, you can go to this PDF, Myth versus Fact of the Arab-Israeli Conflict. It's very good. I've read it. It's true. This is a good one. But the single best piece I have ever seen on Isaac and Ishmael, the Middle East conflict and the foundation for understanding eschatology. Now, leave the eschatology part out of that. I'm not exactly in accordance with their end times prophecy, but they're not entirely all wrong. But as to where this starts, this PDF is excellent. It's biblically based, but it also goes through the history. It tells you what's going on. Biblical definitions of Islam and everything. It's good for an overview of what's going on in the Middle East. What started all this? What's going to come of it? I don't know. I really don't. But I'm trying hard. I know I've been talking about the Bible, but if you've noticed, I've tried to stick mostly to the history sections of the Bible. We dealt with a little of the prophecy, but not a whole lot. I'm wanting to look at the actual, what we would call history, secular history or non-religious sides of this stuff. And in doing so, we'll find the origin of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And in looking at the definitions and the words that get bandied about, this is not racism. the nation of Israel is not being racist against Palestinians or people from Gaza or the Lebanese, not against Arabs, not even against. They have all the legal rights of a regular Israeli citizens. Yeah, they may live in squalor in a lot of places. I got a little news flash for you, folks. As hard as it is to say, have you ever been to the Middle East? Even Saddam's palaces were dirty. Even the well-to-do over there, it's a different culture. One of the things that sets the Hebrew people apart in the Bible is all the commands to wash and to clean and to stay physically clean. That was new to that area in that period of history. And it's still different today. It's just a different culture. So the Jews, Israel, have largely adopted a very pseudo-Western way of living. Different culture. It allows for a higher standard of living. Most of the Arabs living there are adhering to Islam. Different culture. It does not allow for a very high standard of living. Say, well, the Saudi kings, yeah, they just embraced wokeism. Going to advance the LGBTQ community. The Saudis are not. I mean, they're good Muslims with their mouth, but their hearts are far off from their Allah. They're more Western than they are anything else. And even then, I've been there, still squalid and squalor in most cases. The only places that I saw that were Saudi Arabia and Kuwait were the ones that were maintained by Westerners or people under Western influences like the Philippines. Filipinos did a lot of hard work there. They come there to work to make money. That's the Saudi version of South Americans here in the United States. They do the work the Saudis won't do. But the Filipinos are still under heavy Western influence from the United States. What we're looking at are spiritual influences. It's the only thing that's going to explain that to you, because even as a sociologist, I recognize the different cultures. But sociology is not going to explain this all on its own. Until you throw religion in it, you're not going to get once you throw religion in it, I understand what's going on in the Holy Lands very well. And that's what this is all about. And the one side wants to create chaos so that they can destroy the other and rebuild the world image they're liking. This is all an attempt to eradicate Yahweh and reestablish Satan as the highest spiritual being in the universe. It's not going to work. It can't. Satan is a created being. He doesn't know enough to do what he's trying to do. Doesn't have that power or authority. How do you know, Joe? This is all just religious. If he had that power of authority, don't you think he'd have succeeded by now? And yet he fails every time. Patterns. Patterns. Patterns can aid you in your understanding of the world. Look for them. They're not proof in the sense that the Western mind is looking for, but they're proof in the sense that a Hebrew mind would accept. That's what I wanted to show you in the headlines today. I had a whole bunch of other stories, but they would have just stirred the pot. This is in our headlines. And so many of us do not recognize what those headlines are telling us. And even more of us have no idea how much of it is misinformation, half-truths, and outright lies. And most of us, we won't do the research on ourselves, for ourselves, rather. We have a hard time finding truth from fiction. I was trying to find you the sourcing for Soros and the Tides Foundation and PolitiFact and everything. I know it's there. I've seen Glenn Beck detail it in great detail. The internet's been scrubbed. I went 15 pages down, and the only thing I could find was that Quora question, which cites PolitiFact. What was conspicuous here was no alternative source on this subject. None. Not even a cracked cookpot conspiracy theory page. 15 pages down into the feed on DuckDuckGo. And I found nothing. If you've been doing a lot of research, that's an indication that the internet's being scrubbed. Because you always find some crackpot source on these type of subjects. I didn't find any. Not even when I stuck Glenn Beck's name on there. It's just gone. We live in a world of chaos, lies, half-truths, intentional deception. That's what's going on with this Palestinian thing. Whether you like it or not, if you're in the United States, you and I live in a covenant nation based on a covenant that Washington and our founders made with Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we are in breach of that covenant. And he has warned us repeatedly. And we have ignored it. Worse, we've reveled in it, in ignoring it. And we've boasted about our independence and not need. We were even talking about, oh, look, it's a sign of the cross. This eclipse over India, Indiana or whatever. It's a great thing. Look, God loves it. That was a sign of judgment, you morons. The United States is under judgment. We're going to be destroyed. Just like the Northern Kingdom was. We were sent the exact same signs that the Northern Kingdom was sent. We did the exact same stupid stuff that the kingdom did. We will suffer the same fate at the hands of the exact same people. Palestinians, Canaanites, Philistines, Arabs, Moabites, Ammonites, Aramites, all of Yahweh's enemies, Muslims. Who's causing the trouble in this country now? Democrats and Muslims. You've never been here when I told you about the Unholy Alliance? David Horowitz's book, 2004 is when he wrote it, about how the Republican Party is now in bed with Islam, radical Islam, and how Islam's goal is to hoist the flag of jihad over the White House. And the Democratic Party thinks, well, we just get their money and we'll still be able to control that. No, you won't. You're both dancing to the tune of the same spiritual master. We're idiots. As a people, we are foolish. The only thing history has taught us is that we learn nothing from history. And that's what I see in the headlines today. And I'll confess, it has me feeling despondent. But I'm still here. And we'll keep going. Charlie, I'm at about wrapping up point. You got anything you want to add to our show today, or questions, comments, anything from the board?
Well, I'm actually surprised. The last I checked YouTube, we're still streaming. That doesn't mean that a strike will not be coming, but
all of you who are betting with Charlie, you can collect your money from him now before he puts it in some other savings or investment fund to hide it from you.
Yes. I know how to launder my.
Wash your money. You lost.
Yeah.
Charlie.
That's it. Maybe, but it's not over till it's over.
Well, today was just a demonstration to all of you who were worried about me going on my interview in a couple of weeks. I can't do this without getting in too much trouble.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, hey guys, so. I have an Islamic third rail today. Held on to it by the throat.
Yes, you did.
Some of what I was reading to you from the Quran is not supposed to be known to non-Muslims.
Yeah. But that's all been changed because later on he said some other stuff, so that replaces all this earlier stuff, right?
Exactly. He abrogated it. Yes.
Yeah.
So now Muslims are Now Muslims are commanded to wage war against Jews and Christians, especially Jews, until there are no more Jews.
Right.
So, and by the way, for those who think that the land of Israel was originally belonged to them anyhow, the Muslims claim the entire planet. They say the planet was originally theirs. If you understand that in a secular sense, that makes no sense. If you understand that in a spiritual sense, well, at the fall in Eden, this entire planet was given over to Satan. And since Allah is Satan, from that perspective, they're not lying. Cool, huh? They just told a half-truth. It was given to them after somebody else, the original owner, lost it because of disobedience. All right. We'll be here Wednesday. Worship Wednesday. We're going to go over first fruits. This is a deep subject. You want to do a script fly connection? Get your connect the dot paper ready. We're going to do some dot connecting. But we'll go over first fruit, and we'll be touching again a little bit in the unleavened bread and Pentecost, and which is actually Charlie Shavuot, and what we call Pentecost. Correct. Okay, and Passover. So, and then like we're talking about today, there's a pattern in Yahweh's feasts. Lo and behold, there's a chiasm in it. A chiasm with at least 3 parallel lines of thinking. And they all line up. If I could even diagram the feasts and show you the chiasm. But we'll get to that. If you've been in any of, most of my classes, especially the one on chiasms, Wednesday's going to be a treat. So until then, we love each and every one of you, and we thank you for being here. We hope that we help you understand the world in which you live a little bit better or a little bit differently. It's okay if you don't agree with us. We're not scared of that. If nothing else, though, we just ask that you look at it from a different perspective for a while. Then go back to whatever you want to believe. That's fine. But consider it from a different perspective. Expand your mind a little bit. If you think that what we're doing here might help somebody please share the show with them, but send them a specific show. Send them a link directly in a private message or something like that. If all you do is hit share on Facebook, we get throttled. I know that. And they may never see it. But if you do send the show to somebody, please ask them to watch the whole thing and explain me in whichever kind of way suits the purposes in the audience. I know that I'm different. And I know that I'm a cross between, I'm a love child of Sheldon Cooper, Gary House from The Big Bang and the movie TV series House. I got that. I understand. And if you watch TV, you know what I'm getting at. If you watch me, you know what I'm getting at. So it's all right. Also, if you do enjoy what we're doing, we could still use a little bit of help. If you have not yet, maybe go to the donate page and just buy us a $5 cup of coffee every month. Sign up for a $5 reoccurring payment. We do still have a few extra bills. We have to raise reliable monthly income before we can expand to them. But we're going to have to increase the levels, the tiers on Rumble and StreamYard again soon, because we're starting to grow again. And if we can't find the money to fund that, a lot of you are going to have problems with your feeds, or you're going to have to watch replays. Now, some of you might be happy with that. That's okay. But if I could find just a few more of you willing to buy up a coffee, or maybe more if you can afford it, that'll help us out a great deal. Otherwise, we want you to stay safe, and we'll see you Wednesday. Bye-bye.